In a 6-3 decision, the Virginia Supreme Court struck down racial gerrymandering. It was actually the Supreme Court of the United States, I should say, not Virginia. And it was Clarence Thomas who was calling drawing lines based on race, quote, repugnant to any nation that strives for the idea of a colorblind constitution. Congressman Wesley Hunt reacted this way.
There's been a lot of talk how there won't be any black Republican members in the new term.
Yeah.
What do you make of that?
Nothing. I don't understand how that's relevant.
Is there a problem with like recruitment?
I don't think it's a problem with anything. I'm not here because I'm black. I am here because I'm qualified representative for Congressional District 38, and the American people choose who they want to choose.
Yeah.
And the one thing I don't want to get into is this game of race bait all day, every day. If there's 4, if there's 10, if there's none, what we are talking about is who is the best person that is best qualified to fill a seat, regardless of the way that they look.
And Congressman Wesley Hunt joins me now. Congressman, that's very well said. And I agree with Clarence Thomas. The idea is repugnant.
It most certainly is. And Martin Luther King had a dream that one day we'll live in a nation where we are not judged not by the color of our skin, but by the content of our character. And I am a living, breathing product of that dream. And so is Clarence Thomas. At the end of the day, I don't want anything given to me because of the way I look, because of the color of my skin, because, Kayleigh, I am a lot of things. I'm a follower of Christ. I am a veteran. I'm a West Point grad. I am an Apache pilot. I am a United States congressman for a white majority district. And yes, I am black and I am proud. But first and foremost, I am an American, and our laws should reflect that. And right now the left is trying to hammer us because they're saying that there's not going to be any black people that's going to represent the Republican Party in Congress next year. But what they also fail to realize is that three of the four ran and are running for higher office, and one is retiring. And what I don't want to do is put the burden in our laws to ensure that we have an outcome of X amount black people or this and that because of the way someone looks. I want the people of every single district that gets drawn in America to choose the best person. Last time I ran, Kayleigh, I had about 10 people that were in my Republican primary, and 9 of them were white, and I was the only black guy. And of course, I won without a runoff last time I ran for Congress. And why is that? Because people are choosing the best candidate. We have come a very long way. And as someone like me, who is a direct descendant of a slave, who again is living the American dream, because the people are not judging me based on the color of my skin, but the content of my character, is exactly what our laws should reflect. And I give kudos to the Supreme Court for making the right decision.
That is beautifully said. And the best way to not discriminate on the basis of race is to not discriminate on the basis of race, as Justice Roberts once wrote.
You are correct.
Yes. I want to ask you about this Axios headline. GOP spots an opening with black voters. And they make a point that black voters are increasingly moving away from the Democratic Party. And just a narrow shift means a lot for national elections. What do you think about that?
I think it's absolutely accurate. And you mean to tell me that Megan Thee Stallion twerking at the Democrat National Convention, have an open border policy for the past 4 years that ravaged this country, and thinking that biological men can compete against biological women did not resonate very well with black men? Shocking. And at this point, they continue to double down on stupid. They are continuing this same trend of these ridiculous policies that, quite frankly, are not common sense. We need to continue to be the party of common sense, and black people, white people, Hispanic people, Asian people, they will continue to follow what makes the most sense. Look, Democrats are trying to say that having an ID to vote, requiring an ID to vote, is Jim Crow 2.0. And okay, last time that I voted, I walked into the booth, I stood in line with people, Asian people, black people, you name it, pulled up my ID, showed it to them, and I voted just like everybody else. There's nothing racist about that. In fact, the Democrats are the ones that are saying that they believe that we are too stupid to have an ID to vote. I call it the soft bigotry of low expectations. Black men in particular are waking up to this. We must continue to appeal to common sense. And I do think that opportunity is going to be right for us, not just in these midterms, but also in the general election in the next couple of years.
Congressman Hunt, the Democrats lost in a pretty stunning fashion in 2024. President Trump was the first Republican to win the popular vote in 20 years. And Kamala Harris, according to NBC, wants the DNC to release its autopsy report of the 2024 campaign. She's been privately sounding out confidence about her prospects of running as well. I don't think she needs an autopsy report. Do you?
I think we know exactly what happened here, and I thank God for President Trump because he was able to unburden us from what could have been. At the end of the day, she was a horrible candidate, and they actually pulled off the most undemocratic coup I've ever seen in the history of this country. They had a senile Joe Biden that they realized that they could not continue to support him, and they literally shoehorned this woman into this position. Why? Because she was a black woman, even though she was not a very good candidate. And look, voila. How could you possibly be shocked with that kind of outcome? And again, you are not going to continue to throw the wool over our eyes. We know exactly what happened. She was a very poor candidate. They chose identity politics over the best candidate moving forward, and they paid a price. Let this be a cautionary tale for us as well. We must continue to focus on the right policies that put America first. That's the reason why President Trump won every single swing district and the popular vote. As we know, the president is a political state of force that we have never seen in the history of this country. We have to continue to build on that, on the America First agenda for the future. And I do think that we will continue to succeed, not just in these midterms, but also in the general election.
Unburdened by what has been. I saw what you did there, Congressman. Thank you.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.